So this work, Living Originally, I'll show you the book in case you haven't seen it, is, I think it's the best articulation of Unity teachings that we could use for a modern audience, for the present day style of people's thinking. First, it's the application of Unity principles and making it a living process in your own consciousness. And then I want to emphasize that it is the profound experience of absolute good is inherent in this work. And as you apply these practices, you experience the absolute good that is the nature of divinity. Also, this work has a mystical component, a shift in consciousness that arises out of the discipline and focus of our commitment to love, to oneness, to peace and harmony. If you did not have that commitment, if you weren't hungering for that ideal, you wouldn't even be here at Unity, would you? And the church say amen. Now, the chapter topics that we're teaching today are not only this next one, deep self-acceptance, but that's such a big bite, but also unlimited forgiveness, universal benevolence, compassionate communication, and then the first special practice, everything is my teacher. It's a special practice because the first 5 practices are the basis for your own identity, for redefining who you are, discovering the authentic self. The last 5 practices are using them in your experience in the world. So that's a kind of another whole step. So I wanted to prepare us for the last 4 special practices, because we plan to be done with this in 2 more sermons as a series here. And they're such big pieces, they're so exciting. I wanted to be able to have the two of the special practices next week and the last 2 in the final week. And the special practices for next week are Death is my advisor, and Dancing with Chaos. And then the last 2 chapters are Living in the Heart of Desire, and I am the author of my life. So I think those are so rich and inspiring. I wanted to have time to devote to those. So we're getting this preliminary work covered. Okay. So, deep self-acceptance. How many of you have experienced EFT, doing the emotional freedom technique? This work is using the meridians of the body, the energy meridians of the body, and tapping in the ideation. The statement is, even though, and you fill in the blank of whatever is your issue. Like say, even though I have a sprained knee, even though my knee is sprained, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And you tap in here to the first big meridian locus. Then you go to other spots. Here, 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 and everyone is here, here, and then on the top of your head finally. And what that does is that combs out the static of misinformation, of distress. And it is amazing when it's done right. You cover all these acupressure points with the tapping, saying, even though I had an argument with my sister, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And when done properly, tears flow. Memories are cleansed and released. Symptoms of pain vanish right then. That's how powerful self-acceptance is. So as you expand your skill of self-awareness, you also then add the element of suspending judgment of yourself. Our entire egoic state of consciousness is founded on looking good to ourselves. This is a very big thing to transcend. It's more than walking on a bed of coals, in my opinion. To transcend our habitual way of seeing ourselves in ego states where we're trying to look good to ourselves and judging ourselves and hiding from that judgment. It's a big nut to crack. It's quite an onion to peel. But to transcend that is what this work is out to do. By this radical self-awareness we talked about last week, which means you become aware of your own reactions, not just aware of your awareness, but of the choices that you make. And then add to that how you are judging yourself. And let that go and just see yourself. And accept yourself. This begins a process of insight that slows down your moment-to-moment reactions. It becomes a true kind of state of, a high that people start to become more reflective, more open to sharing their feelings with one another. It is the true tone of a spiritual family on a journey of love. You recognize that? That's us. We're a spiritual family on a journey of love. And when people really get hold of this suspending judgment of yourself, this is what happens at Unity Village. This is why it's so magic at Unity Village. People walking around in the gardens, going in and out of classes together, in this altered state of suspending judgment of yourself and everything else. That's what does it. You can have that right now. So, unlimited forgiveness is the next step. This means toward ourselves and others. It's not, you see, it's not the actual case of the offense. It's not the situation that's being considered that matters. It's the energy of that condemnation. It's the vibration of that judgment and that resistance that contaminates us. And we're learning to then, I want to emphasize that this is the profound experience of the absolute good that is the nature of the world. So, the energy that contaminates us is what we are learning to transcend. How many of you feel like you're on that journey? I know you are. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I know each one of you has told me at one point or another, not forgiving somebody else hurts me more than it hurts them. Everyone has said that. But there's a scene from a movie that's described in the book here. I never knew about this movie. It's called The Mission. How many of you have heard of this mission? It stars Robert De Niro and Jeremy Irons. He knows it, okay? And Ruth. Well, it's on YouTube, this one scene, so extraordinary. It won the Palme d'Oro at the Cannes Film Festival the year that it came out, 1986. It's not a true history, but it's a historical piece. It takes place in the 1700s and involves a Spanish Jesuit priest who meets up in South America. He's trying to minister to the Guarani tribe, and they live at the top of a high waterfall that's called Iguazu Falls. So the priest meets up with this slaver, and he's also a mercenary, played by Robert De Niro. And the slaver gets into a duel with his younger brother over a woman and kills him. And he's so depressed with guilt and shame, he goes to the priest, and the priest gives him penance to do, which involves carrying a heavy sack of metal objects up the cliff, up the falls to the very top, over and over, until he feels a sense of relief from his guilt. And so the man climbs up these cliffs with great effort, and he doesn't feel any sense of remorse lifting. He still feels just as guilty as ever. But he keeps on making these trips. And finally, in this one trip, he has dragged a sack of really heavy metal objects all the way to the top. And when he gets to the top, he finds one of the tribesmen waiting with a knife poised in his hand. One of the tribesmen, the Morani tribe, that he has hijacked and stolen their members into slavery. And so he crouches down, prepared to be slaughtered by this tribesman. And what happens is the tribesman cuts the rope that's tying that heavy burden onto him and lets it fall to the bottom. And when the slave man sees what this tribesman has done, he just starts to cry. He just goes into tears. Transformation. And then the tribespeople see him crying and they all start to laugh with joy. And he turns from tears to laughter himself. And I think that scene is what won the prize at Cannes for them. This marvelous rendition of true forgiveness. True forgiveness. Then next is universal benevolence. And he says that is demonstrated. Universal benevolence consists, the actual acts of it are appreciation, constant appreciation, kindness, and generosity. That's how he breaks it down and shows it out. And then compassionate communication can be facilitated by these three questions. Before you say something, you ask, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? I recently had an interview for what's called the regional representative of the Great Lakes region, and they asked me, tell us about a time recently when you had an issue with somebody else, and how you would have done it differently if you look back on it. If I would have had these three questions, when midnight of the eve of Easter, and Vina came in to clean, and I asked her to tell me when she was leaving so I would know when I was alone in the building, and I found that she left without telling me. Now, at that point, did I need to call her and say, you left without telling me, like I asked you to? Was it necessary? No. But I did it. And it made her become defensive, and we had to settle our differences again and process all three of this thing. It wasn't necessary. Compassionate communication, very useful. And it's built on self-awareness, but it requires us to have that commitment to universal benevolence. And here is an illustrative story that he provides here. And this is a true story about universal benevolence, compassionate communication, unlimited forgiveness. This happened in Cambodia during the reign of the Killing Fields, when Pol Pot, I believe it's pronounced, was the leader, from 1975 for the next 20 years. More than 2 million Cambodians died in this infamous genocide. So, on one occasion, this Buddhist, Maha Ghosananda, announced to the refugees that there would be a Buddhist ceremony and all who wished to come would be welcome, but you see they had routed the Buddhists. But many people were curious to come, and 10,000 refugees came to this meeting and shared in the ceremony. And the Buddhist monk Mahabosananda sat for some time in silence. What could one possibly say to this group of people who had lost so much? What he did next was to begin to repeat a verse from the sacred Buddhist scripture, Dhammapada. And he said, "Hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed. This is an ancient and eternal law." These were people who had as much cause to hate as anyone on earth, yet as the Buddhist monks sat there chanting this verse over and over, thousands of voices, one by one, joined together in unison, saying, "Hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed. This is an ancient and eternal law." People started weeping. They had been through so much sorrow, so much pain. Just to hear the sound of these words was precious. The truth. So, we move on now to the first practice that is a special practice, the advanced application to everyday experiences. Everything is my teacher. So, if everything, absolutely everything that we experience is going to be a source of learning for us, it makes the point, what do we mean by learning here? What is learning in this context? Well, let me tell you, beautifully. Conventional learning extends my knowledge and skills horizontally. This type of learning may broaden me considerably, but it does not necessarily deepen me. Deep learning is when I learn something I didn't even know I didn't know. Deep learning takes me into a new dimension of being. It's not only going to a place I've not been to before, but it's going to a place I could not even have conceived of before. This is the nature of deep learning. It can be recognized only after the learning takes place. It cannot be fully understood within my existing framework of understanding. To live originally is to be fully open to deep learning every moment of my life. It means to use everything as my teacher. So this is what we can find in this teaching. Everything is my teacher. That deep learning is part of this living originally practice. Let me read it again. To live originally is to be fully open to deep learning every moment of my life. It means to use everything as my teacher. So to close, I want to tell you this story, a children's story that I always use in my children's events. It illustrates my children's mini retreats. It illustrates many of the techniques we visited in this sermon. And it's called Goodburn on the Hillside. I hope nobody's heard it. Have you heard it? Okay. I hadn't heard it until I came across it. And I found myself telling this story to Anita's two granddaughters. Their names were Leela and Naya. The other night, they were sitting on my lap and I told it from memory. And I realized it just fits, I think, into this context of what we're exploring, of unlimited goodwill. So I mean, it's nice if I had people to illustrate the story, but you look so comfortable, I'm not going to leave you alone, okay? Just pretend you're imagining to see this. So, once upon a time, there was a man named Gudbrand. The text of this lends itself to an accent. I have to go into an accent. And he had a farm on a hillside, so they called him Gudbrand on the Hillside. And he and his wife got along so well. Everything he did, she thought was wonderful. And one day she said, you know, dear, we have 2 cows, and I think you should take 1 cow and sell it. That's what I think, because then we would have some money on hand, and then I wouldn't have to take care of 2 cows like I do now. So we said, all right, dearie, and he roped up the cow and took it to town. And there was no one in town to buy it. No one wanted to buy it. So he says, oh well, I guess I'll just go back home. It's no further out than in. So he starts back home, and on the road he meets a man with a horse. So he traded his cow for the horse. So I'd rather have that horse. Okay, so he keeps on going, and on the way he meets a man with a pig. And he says, hey, I think I'd rather have the pig than the horse, so we traded the horse for the pig. Farther on, he met a man with a goat. Guess what he did? He traded the pig for the goat. Farther on, down the road, then he met a man with a sheep. He thought, it's always better to have a sheep than a goat. You want to trade anything? So he has the sheep, he's going on down the road, and he meets a man with a goose. Oh, I know I would love that goose. So he traded the sheep for the goose. Still farther, he met a man with a rooster. I think I'd rather have that rooster than this goose. So he traded for the goose. And then he found he was so hungry, he sold the rooster for a few shillings and bought some food to eat. And then he stopped by his neighbor on the way home, and the neighbor said, so how did you do in town? He says, well, I can't praise my luck. He told him everything that he did, and the neighbor said, oh, I wouldn't want to be in your shoes when you get home. Your wife's going to be pretty mad at you. And so Gudrun said, oh, I don't think she will be. I don't think she will. And the man said, I will bet you 100 crowns I have in my trunk over here that she will give you a raking over the coals for this. He says, okay, you have a bet. So they walked over to the house, and the neighbor waited outside the window, and Gudrun went into his home, and his wife said, oh, is that you? Now I am happy. So how did it go with you in town? And Gudrun said, oh, only so-so. No one would buy the cow, so you must know I traded it away for a horse. For a horse, said his wife. Well, that is good of you. Thanks with all my heart. We're so well-to-do that we may drive to church now, just as well as other people, and if we choose to keep a horse, we have a right to get one, I should think. So turning to their child, she said, run out, dearie, and put up the horse. Ah, said Gudrun, but you see, I have not the horse after all. But when I got a bit farther on the road, I traded it for a pig. Think of that now, said the wife. You did just as I should have done myself. 1,000 things. Now I can have a bit of bacon in the house to set before people when they come to see me, that I can. What do we want with a horse? People would only say we had got so proud we couldn't walk to church. Go out, child, and put the pig up in the stall. But I have not the pig either, said Gudrun, for when I got a little farther on, I traded it for a goat. Dear me, cried the wife, how well you manage everything. Now I think it over, what should I do with a pig? People would only point at us and say, yonder they eat up all they have. No, now I have a goat, and I shall have milk and cheese, and keep the goat too. Run out, child, and put up the goat. Nay, but I haven't the goat either, said Gudrun, for a little farther on I traded it away and got a fine sheep instead. You don't say so, cried his wife. Why, you do everything just to please me, just as if I'd been with you. What do we want with a goat? If I had it, I should lose half my time in climbing up the hills to get it down. No, if I have a sheep, I can have both wool and clothing and fresh meat in the house. Run out, child, and put up the sheep. But I haven't the sheep any more than the rest, said Gudrun, for when I got a bit farther, I traded it away for a goose. Thank you, with all my heart, cried his wife. What should I do with a sheep? I have no spinning wheel or carding comb. Who should I care to worry myself with cutting and shaping and sewing clothes? We can buy clothes now as we've always done. And now I shall have roast goose, which I have longed for so often, and besides down with which to stuff my little pillow. Run out, child, and put up the goose. Well, said Gudrun, I haven't the goose either, for when I got a bit farther, I traded it for a rooster. How you think of everything, just as I should have done myself. A rooster, think of that. Why, it's as good as an 8-day clock. For every day the rooster crows at 4 o'clock, and we shall be able to stir our stiff legs in good time. What should we do with a goose? I don't know how to cook it, and as for my pillow, I can stuff it with cotton grass. Run out, child, and put up the rooster. But after all, I haven't got the rooster either, said Gudrun, for when I had gone a bit farther, I became as hungry as a hunter, so I was forced to sell the rooster for a shilling, for fear I should starve. Now, God be praised that you did so, cried his wife. Whatever you do it always, just after my own heart. What should we do with the rooster? We are our own masters, I should think, and can lie in bed in the morning as long as we like. Heaven be praised that I have you back, safe again. You who do everything so well, and want neither roost, and makes me I want neither rooster, nor gooses, nor pigs, nor cattle. Then Gudrun opened the door with the neighbor who was waiting and said, well, what do you say now? Have I won 100 crowns? And his neighbor was forced to admit that he had. The end. I said I was closing with that, but I have one more story. It's a Zen story. If that story was too long for you, this is a short story. Okay. So the Zen master, this is in Everything is My Teacher, he says. A young man went to a Zen master and said earnestly, I am devoted to studying Zen. How long will it take me to become enlightened? The teacher quickly replied, 10 years. Impatiently, the student answered, but I want to attain it faster than that. I will work very hard. I will meditate 12 hours a day, every day. How long will it take then? The teacher paused for a moment and then replied, 20 years. Be curious, be persistent, and stay open. This is the best way to learn how to do anything. How many of you remember the Zen master story from last week? Is it? Oh yes. The student asked the Zen master, what is the most important thing for me to learn? The master thought for a moment and said, good judgment. Remember this now? Anybody remember? And the student said, how do I learn good judgment? And the master thought and said, bad judgment. And so for this time of meditation, we relax, let go, turn within, focus on the inner realm of light, that inner closet, that secret place of the Most High that we abide in when we consciously and intentionally commune with God. And so we relax our bodies, let them drape comfortably in our seat. Let our breath deepen. Our breath continuous and flowing, breathing in the breath of Spirit, the breath of God, the breath of life itself. We release our processes, our emotions, our thoughts. Let them fly away like bubbles in the air. And come to this altar where we are filled with light, where we are uplifted and inspired. Our statement for meditation is, my inner light reveals the truth to me. And let us vocalize this now together as an affirmation. Together, my inner light reveals the truth to me. And say that silently in your heart. And we allow this intention to settle deeply into every fiber of our being. To know and to trust the power that abides within us to reveal everything we need. The superconscious mind, ever abiding, ever revealing, quickening and healing us to ever higher states of being. As we rest now in the silence. Harmony in the ever-loving, ever-forgiving power of Jesus Christ. Our walk moves us ever forward, miraculously, beautifully, lovingly and peacefully. Every burden fades away. Every matter resolves to peace. And we are fully anointed, blessed, and at peace. And so it is. Amen.